Hi, Katie. Thanks for your patience as I did take two of this. I think this is going to be a much better webinar than the one that I gave on Thursday, even though, ironically, this is one that after I revisited it, I was 100% prepared. It was 100% done, but for some reason in my mind, I just didn't think that I could do it and do it well. So hopefully this one will be a much better outing for our final session of our four-part series. So thanks again for your patience with this. Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. I am so thrilled to be here for part four of our four-part series, which is exploring all about how you can become a change-ready organization. Like I said, it's all been leading up to this final session in our four-part series, and I just cannot wait to get started. And I want to thank all of you for being here today to play along and learn along with me and Katie and the entire Painted Porch community. So, when we first started this series a few months ago, we started by laying the foundation and talking about what the four pillars are for change success. We started by talking about what it meant to have a clearly defined strategy. We then said that in order to be change ready, it wasn't just about your strategy, but it was also having clean, aligned, and very clearly purposeful systems. Then last month, I sat down with one of my favorite women who I think is just a superhero when it comes to processes, Sarah Moss, and we talked all about the importance and the value of having strongly documented and clearly defined processes. And that leads us all up to today, our final session in our series on how to create a change-ready organization. And that is having empowered, change-ready people. But before we dive into what that means and what you can start to do to lay that foundation for change readiness in your organization, starting with people, wanted to take just a quick recap of the three other tenets, the three other pillars that we talked about on your path to change success. So we first talked about when we met with Tim Jackson and Aaron McKenzie of Newberry Partners, we talked about this idea of strategy. And we really explored and dug deep into what strategy is, as well as what strategy isn't. And to quote the ever quotable Tim Jackson, it's not complicated, it's just freaking hard. And really, what he meant by that is that it's something that often we just don't take the time to do or see the value in having a clearly defined strategy, often, especially when we're embarking on these really big change initiatives in our organization. We said that really having a strategy is really all focused on building alignment and creating shared understanding of the vision and direction for any project. We said that strategy is not the how, it's not the tactics. It's more focused on the why, the what, the where, and the who. We talked about how it's really important that when it comes to your strategy, that you calibrate your compass, the direction that you're moving to as an organization with that strategy, making sure there's not misguided maps or misalignment between where you say you want to take your organization, your vision, your mission, your values, and this strategic plan that you're going to be putting in place for this change that you're embarking on. We also said that you have to take the time to get it right, or you're going to need to take the time to do it right later, right? Strategy will always demand time. It's just whether you do it proactively or when you are in the thick of a change that has gone awry, which I know many of us have been there on some occasion, right? And then lastly, it's ensuring that as part of any strategy that you have, you also include a strategy for resource planning and engagement. So that way you lay a really solid foundation and map to increase adoption, improve adaption, and to get people willing and able and capable and excited to lean in and learn more. We then, with Jeff Ozenbaugh, talked about systems and the importance of doing an analysis on the systems that you have today, as well as really thinking about the systems that you want to bring into place tomorrow. And when it comes to those systems that you're evaluating, whether it's technical systems or systems of doing, making sure that you are not perpetuating maybe a solution to a problem that it doesn't really need to be solved for the future. Jeff talked about this Rube Goldberg self-operating napkin, and I think some of us, when we've built our tech stacks in the past, they've probably looked a little bit like this on occasion, but it's getting really clear and understanding what our technology pursuits are, ensuring that they align with our strategy, as well as making sure that we're not bringing any old workarounds or hacks into the future design of our systems that we want to put in place. And then last month, we talked with Sarah Moss all about the power, the importance, and the impact of having really well-defined and documented operations, having that visible representation of what it is you do within your organization, including all of the people, the processes, the players, the tasks, the handoffs, the approvals, the roadblocks, all of those different components. By taking the time to document what is, you'll be able to better clearly design what's next. And it's really all about responsibility and being able to spot areas of redundancy or inefficiency, maybe possible areas of risk, and really leaning in and highlighting those opportunities for you to optimize what you're doing today. The benefits of process mapping, though, go beyond just nice boxes on a page, right, that you might see in a Lucid chart or a Visio. But really, when you have process mapping, it provides a way to create strategic prioritization and value change alignment. So everybody is not just hearing the words about what your strategy is, but they're actually able to see it in action. They're actually able to step through it through a process map and help get maybe a little bit more comfortable or identify areas maybe that have been missed or areas that could even be further optimized down the road. It also helps establish really strong process ownership and accountability. No longer are people just staying in their lane and only focusing on what their department or what their tasks need to be. By documenting your processes, it actually shines a light on what the entire organization is doing and how each person within the organization actually contributes to your processes, to your operations, and to the success of your organization. It helps create maybe a little bit more compassion, a little bit more clarity, and a little bit more understanding and spotting opportunities where maybe there's some things that could be tweaked for your fellow neighbor down the road on the process path. It provides that big picture awareness, and it does help create change ready and engaged teams because they can see it, they can understand it. Like I said, they can walk through it, they can engage with it, and they feel more prepared when that change is actually put into place. But today, our final session in our four-part series is really, I know, my favorite and I think Katie's favorite as well here, which is all about readying your people. So that way, all of that hard work, the strategy, the systems, the processes can help you accelerate your change. Because I don't know if you've realized this, but change of any kind is 100% dependent on your leaders, your teams, and your people's ability to actually make it happen. Regardless of how much training or how much communication you give them, their ability to actually move forward through something new, something unknown, an unexplored territory, a new land that they are moving towards on their ship of change. The only way that that is going to happen is if you have teams who are aligned and who are ready, willing, and able to make change happen. So let's get into it. But first, for those of you maybe who are just joining us for the first time, I wanted to do a quick introduction, a quick hello, and say I am Amy Akowski. I am the founder, change navigator, and chief evolution officer at Painted Porch Strategies. We are a training and advisory organization that is dedicated to helping you navigate the shifts that inevitably happen within your business and helping to empower your people to actually navigate those shifts with courage and confidence. And I am here always with my partner in crime, the woman who makes all of this happen and keeps our ship steadily moving forward, even when it feels like sometimes there's chaos all around us. Katie Cridler, our marketing director. Okay, so today, when it comes to change readiness and specifically readying your people so that that way they can feel successful and you will have a more successful change in the end, we're going to talk about a couple things. First off, why change readiness matters. Why is readying your people for change so important? As well as what is change readiness? How is it different, say, from change management? And what are the additional or alternative practices that you can bring into your organization to create and make them more change ready than maybe they had been before? And then some really actionable steps that you can begin to take to get you on your path towards a change ready organization that is more successful as you navigate change. But first, I wanted to take a moment and just explain a little bit about why I'm talking about this. So, my background has been in the staffing industry for the last now 20 years. Yes, I started when I was 10. But over those 20 years, I've worked in staffing firms, both as a recruiter and a staffer, but also as a corporate trainer and a system administrator. And then I've also worked on the product and implementation side of things, helping design new features and functions for some of probably your favorite or maybe infamous ATSs, as well as partnering with folks like Newberry and other implementation partners to help organizations prepare for what's next. And over the course of this time, I really started to spot some patterns. And I'm sure that many of you can relate to this, where you have done some sort of assessment. You've determined that in order to continue to grow and scale and accelerate or even just stay afloat as an organization, change has to happen. In fact, ironically, change is something that happens every day, but sometimes we struggle with it when it's a very big change or something that's planned or more intentional. But when we navigate these changes, we recognize that something different has to happen. So we do all this research. Maybe you do a couple RFPs and demos with a variety of different software vendors. You select one, you meet with your implementation partner, people get in a room, they start designing something new. Fast forward, you get to the end. Either it's severely over budget, or maybe you've had to push your go live date more than one time. People really can't seem to get along or agree on what the future needs to be. Or when you get to the end of this big project, often this big multi-million dollar, multi-resource, multi-months, or even years project, you get to the end of it, and lo and behold, what you've implemented looks and feels a lot like what you already do today. And sometimes it can even feel like it's a step back when the whole reason you went about this was in pursuit of something better, something faster, something greater, something that would provide greater opportunity and growth and scalability for your organization. But everybody, once they get to the end, is either apathetic, wants to just go home, get it over with, or they start using it and you have really low adoption and high resistance. Show of hands. How many of you have experienced this? If you want, put it in the chat. I think the majority of us have at some point. And it's not because the desire wasn't there. There wasn't an awareness that change needed to happen. In fact, probably if you took a survey and asked everyone in the organization or the majority of people, what is it that we need to do next? I'm sure the majority of them would say we need to change what we're doing and how we're doing it. We need to change the technology that we have. Maybe we need to optimize some of our processes. It's very manual, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Everybody is in agreement that this change needs to happen. And yet, for some reason, there's a struggle when it comes to implementing the change. And it's not because these people are not the right people. It's also because they're not capable. In fact, I would regularly get in rooms for several months where we would be designing new technology or a new way that we were going to do things, or maybe even new features within our solutions. And we would constantly be butting up against the current state. What is, what's known, what's familiar, how we do things today. And these were very smart people. These, I always like to say, they were the SMEs of SMEs, the super subject matter experts. They knew their job in and out, but they really struggled at times to actually come up and step outside of what they already knew and get comfortable with exploring something that maybe hadn't yet been done yet, or hadn't been designed, or hadn't been tried. So that's really where this idea of change readiness for me came from. I recognized this gap, I recognized this need, and I said, you know what? It's not just bringing the right people in the room. It's making sure that they're also rowing in the same direction. We have alignment, and we also know how we can best work together in order to move these big ideas, this innovation forward. So that's what I want to talk about today. So you may remember this if you attended our first session in the summer with Joe Calzone and Sean Beatty from Newbury Partners, where we talked about the rate of change in business since 2019. This is crazy when I look at this, that the rate of change has increased so much, in fact, like you can see 2019, 2020 was like only about 5%. And then blammo, we all know what happened in 2020, right? And then basically the train really hasn't stopped since then. It's maybe decreased a little bit because we're starting to get back to a little bit of a sense of normalcy. I use that term loosely, but you can see that the rate of change just in the last 4 years has been 183%. And according to an Accenture Pulse of Change Index that they conducted, the rate of change is going to continue to increase, with 88% of C-suite leaders expecting an even faster rate of change through 2024 and beyond. So, if all of this is happening at such an increased rate, what is the confidence of you in your leaders and teams and organization to keep up, right? That's really what we're looking at here today. Because sadly, the truth is that we're not really great with change. The latest numbers say that about over 70% of change projects are delayed, disrupted, or fail to meet their intended outcomes. And that's not because of a lack of well intention, of awareness and desire. It could be a lack of strategy. It could be a lack of poor system analysis. It could be a lack of not having processes documented. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it is something where people are not able to do what they are expected to do and don't have the proper training or preparation in order to execute change at the level and speed that is and frequency that the world is now demanding of all of us. So if we took a survey, and this is from Gartner back in 2022, so I can imagine it's probably even shifted even more, just given those numbers that we saw earlier. When they were surveyed, people were surveyed and asked, how prepared are your people within any organization for change? Only 38% of employees were cited as willing to support some sort of organizational change. Only 39% of employees felt that they were ready for the change that was being either thrust upon them or that they were being asked to help co-design. And this is the big one. 73% of change affected employees reported experiencing moderate to high stress levels. So I don't know about you, but when I am overly stressed, I am not thinking at my best. I am not making the clearest decisions. In fact, I'm trying to get things off of my plate as quickly as possible so that way I don't have to think about it anymore. And I would imagine, I'm going to assume here that when it comes to the amount of money, time, and resources that you are plunking down on some of these change initiatives, you don't want, I'm just going to say, you don't want half-assed change. You want transformational change. You want change that doesn't just tinker, but that maybe reimagines what you are doing and how you're doing it. So that way you can not just manage for the short term, but you set your organization up for the long term. And that is not going to happen if Your people are experiencing moderate to high levels of stress, burnout, and overwhelm. So let's talk about change readiness. So, what is change readiness? Well, we talked about that without a solid strategy, that change initiatives can fumble, fizzle, or fail. They can lead to increased costs and delays. They can result in projects that go way over what we originally expected them to be, or way over time, or you possibly even have a little bit of resource musical chairs where people just keep dropping out like flies and new people come in. So when we think about change readiness and how I define and we define change readiness on the painted porch, it's really three core things. It's having individuals be able to have the curiosity to ask why, to dig a little bit deeper beyond the what and the how, and to have the curiosity to ask why. It's also being able to have the courage to challenge the status quo, to challenge the current state, to challenge what is, to challenge, well, that's the way we've always done it type of thinking. And it's also having your leaders and teams have the confidence and the capability to be able to design something entirely new. I always like to say that when we go into these change projects, well intended, we usually pluck from the organization people who that excel in their role. They've either been doing it for a really long time or they seem to have the best acumen when it comes to executing that role. And while there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying go in it with clear eyes, in that just because someone is really good at the job they're doing today, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are the person that is going to be able to thoughtfully, intelligently, courageously, and confidently design something new for tomorrow. I always like to ask this question, and I'll ask it here, and I'll see in the chat if you would like to share. How many of you would consider yourself good drivers? Pretty good drivers. Yeah, I see a couple yeses. Yeah, pretty good driver. I love the people that are like, well, I think I'm okay. It depends on the day. But yeah, most of us would consider ourselves pretty good drivers. I can get to point A to point B rather well without texting and driving, making sure that I stay in my lane, right? Not creating any type of chaos or accidents along the way. But just because I'm a good driver doesn't mean that I know how to build a car. And that's really what we're thinking about, what we're talking about when we pursue these big change initiatives, especially digital transformations. What you are doing is you are saying, you, Sally, you're really great at your job. You're an excellent driver of sales. Come on in. We want you to design a whole new change process for us. And I will say on the flip side, if your answer is, well, we don't want to design a new change process, then I would question, then what exactly are you changing in your organization? Because so often we tend to pursue these new technologies, these new initiatives, and we literally just want to take what we have today and just shove it into a new, shinier, faster system tomorrow. And the truth is I'm sure the folks on the Newberry side will attest to this as well as any software vendors that you've worked with. They will say that most likely what's going to happen is actually going to slow you down more because you're trying to take the same exact processes that were executed in a different system and apply them into a system that doesn't act, look, or behave in the same exact way. So inevitably, change and adjustment of how you do things must happen, but often we can struggle with that. So when it comes to this idea of change readiness and specifically change readiness of your people, it's those three C's: curiosity, courage, and confidence. And it really focuses on creating alignment across the organization. It's about creating opportunities for discussion versus directives. And it's focusing on this idea of collaboration versus top-down communication. That is how change truly happens in an organization. It is a movement that starts from the bottom or the middle out, as opposed to something that is going to happen from the top down. So, on the painted porch, we view this idea of change readiness and change success as getting on a path. And this path is an acronym, as you can see here, and it really constitutes four key stages of effort and focus and activities within your organization. It starts with preparation. And we'll get more into this in just a moment. It's then assembling the right people and the right information in order to prepare you for success. It's then having a very clear plan for taking this change off, taking it on the road, taking it to the masses. And this is not just about comms and training. And then, most importantly, any change is not a destination, right? It's a journey. When you think about change, we often think about it as these big projects, but the truly successful organizations are those that have built a culture of change, a culture of innovation and future focused minds and teams and leaders. It's, as Tony Robbins likes to say, canny, continuous and never ending improvement and innovation. That is what we're aiming for with this idea of getting on a path towards change success. So if we look at this path, there's 10 key steps along this path, this journey of change that can help set you up for more predictive success and probability of greater change adoption and adaption of your people to try this new thing in a way that creates excitement as opposed to just, doing it because they're told to do it, which is never a great way to change. So these steps include defining your destination, pinning your starting point, assembling change navigators, and so on. We'll talk about these more in just a moment. But if you look at this map, typically, when we think about how we approach change in our organization, I would say, and again, this is based on slightly biased, but 20 years of working in and alongside staffing firms as they navigate change. The majority of organizations, when I or my team would come in and we would start talking about change, we would usually start, sorry, we'd usually start here at takeoff. Usually what happens is it looks something like this. There's a town hall that you have, or there's a company-wide email that's sent from the CEO or the CIO or someone like that that says, great news. We are going to be embarking on this big change project. You're going to start seeing some new people in and around the office. You might be asked to hop on some calls, but we're going to start designing the future. Hooray. Get on board. Now, while that's not a bad communication, often it's a little too late in the process. There's a whole other set of work that, in order to truly prepare your organization for these big changes that you're going to be embarking on, needs to happen before you announce it, start designing the future, start configuring a system, and then doing testing and training and crossing your fingers and closing your eyes and holding your nose and hope that it all works out. Right? There's a few more things that you can do before this third stage of takeoff to create greater success for you and your team. It starts in these first two stages that I like to call phase zero. So phase zero is the phase of readiness, the phase of change preparation that happens way before, or ideally, I should say, way before you do that kickoff announcement. You start bringing people in a room and you start asking them to play nice and design something new and hope that it works and supports your organization. Right? There's a little bit more that you can do here in this phase one. In our preparation stage, that first stage, prepare, it starts by defining your destination. We talked a lot about this in our first session about strategy, and I even shared with you that strategic change canvas that you can use to help just designing and visualizing what the strategy of this change will be and the people, the players, and the processes that might be impacted along the way. It's also plotting your starting point by bringing in probably somebody like Sarah and her team to do a current state clarity workshop series. So that way you have an understanding and a reality of what actually is done today. So that way you can go in with clear eyes and a clear understanding when it comes to designing what you need to do for the future and not bringing all of those bad habits, those workarounds, those hacks, those risks, those redundancies along with you in the future. And it's during this preparation stage that we really start to get a little curious and we start to explore, okay, what is it that we love about what we do in our organization today? What is it maybe that we loathe? What makes us stand out? And maybe what's holding us back? Doing these pieces can help set a nice point of you are here. Where is it that we're starting from? So that way we know where best to travel next. The Stoic Seneca once was quoted as saying, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." And that's really what this preparation phase is meant to do, help you establish your port and begin to put the pieces in place to understand where you're at today so you know the journey that you need to map for change in the future. In the next stage, the assemble stage, this is my favorite stage, if I'm being completely honest, is all about people. And it starts by developing your change ambassador network, your CAN, the people that can, right? Your CAN network. This change ambassador network is meant to be just like it sounds. They are meant to be your representatives for this change. And it should include people across the organization and across different levels of your company, and also not just include your biggest cheerleaders. I strongly encourage with any change ambassador network, you include a diverse mix of roles, experience, perspectives, and ideas, because that is the way that you are going to be able to ensure that you get the best coverage, the best picture of what your organization needs and getting the right mix of voices and support and perspective to ensure that you're not missing anything along the way and it doesn't pop up during the, week before go live, during training, or even after you've gone live. This is also the opportunity where you plan for the unplanned. This is, in a sense, a little bit of planning for failure, but it's more so planning for what could potentially derail you. Thinking about things like obstacles, risk, resistance, constraints, whether it's seasonal within your business. Sometimes you have peaks and valleys, like example in healthcare, the fall and winter are usually really busy times just because of flu season and whatnot. And it's also the opportunity for you to craft your milestone moments and celebrations. Your go live should not be the only time that you recognize that this change has happened, but you want to embed throughout your plan, throughout your project, those moments that you want to pause, reflect, celebrate, and evaluate to determine if you're still on the right path or maybe if there's some course correction that needs to happen along the way. Our third step is all about taking off. And like I said, this is the one that you're probably the most familiar with because this is often where change starts, where change begins, where it's kicked off. This is, though, all about creating alignment and context. It's creating a continuous feedback loop of information, of perspective, of decisions, of progress across the organization with the help of your change ambassadors. This is also where you start taking the show on the road. You engage continually and regularly, whether it's through town halls, newsletters, or a variety of different ways that you can communicate and collaborate with your organization to keep them engaged, to keep them interested, to help them maybe be a little bit more curious and be willing to lean in, step up, speak up, and get involved in the change. It's also, this is where you typically will be designing your future state. Again, probably with somebody like Sarah and the Newberry team, designing that future state, mapping it out, seeing it, feeling it, walking through it, spotting where there's opportunities to optimize, as well as things maybe that you want to leave in the past and not bring with you into the future. And this is also where you start developing your training and support plan and continue to serve as coaches and advisors to your organization, to your employees. So that way, when you get to that actual go live, everyone is more prepared than what they would have been before and maybe a little bit more excited and feeling like they were a part of the change. It wasn't just a change that was thrust upon them. And then, as I said, all of this in the end is not meant to just get to that destination, get to that go live and go, all right, well, that was fun. Let's not do that again for a few more years. Instead, creating a habit, creating an organization that is change ready always. So that way, whenever there's a market demand, a pivot, a shift, a pandemic, whatever it might be, you as an organization are primed. You have a culture of innovative and adaptive thinking. So that way, you keep momentum going. Change becomes a habit that people are excited to discover and to embrace and to lead. And so that way you're continuing to reinforce and reflect and refine and repeat and repeat and repeat and continue to support them. So that's the overall path to help you develop a change-ready organization that is focused on your people, that is focused on ensuring that they are supported, that they are encouraged, that they are included, that they are engaged, and that they have a voice and they are serving as vital members on your crew. If you remember back during our strategy session, we talked about that alignment and with resources. And we said, it's not just that everybody's on the same boat, it's that they understand that the direction that you're going and they're all rowing in the same direction and know the part that they play in helping keep the boat not just afloat, but actually moving towards your destination, your goal, the outcomes that you want to achieve. And it all starts by not shortcutting. Woo, it's early apparently. By not shortcutting the work that happens before you actually kick off the project. That work in phase 0 to ensure that you are setting yourself, your people, your processes, your systems, and your strategy up for greater success down the road. So all of this, so when we think about developing change-ready leaders and teams, what the ultimate goal is that we seek to achieve through the work that we do and through the work that we do in partnership with Newberry and other implementation partners and vendors is really 4 things. When we think about change-ready people and change-ready leaders and teams, it's individuals who have these 4 key critical skills. It's understanding how to be resilient, how they can navigate uncertainty, moments of stress, maybe high demand, those times maybe when burnout or overwhelm start to creep in. It's how can they stay resilient through these challenges, whether challenges within the change or just the everyday challenges that this ever-changing world is presenting to us. We do that through focusing on emotional intelligence, mindfulness, so that way they can stay present and focused and bringing their full self, their full ideas, their full intentions to any conversation. And also being comfortable with adopting a growth mindset. Instead of thinking about what is, being more comfortable with maybe what's possible, what's next. It's also learning how to be more communicative, learning how to master their message, how they craft their communications, how they share ideas with one another, how they speak up, how they challenge. So that way you can maximize clarity, ensure comprehension, and achieve maximum impact with any communication that you are sending out, that you are broadcasting out, but also the communications that happen every day or within meetings, especially in these meetings where we're designing the future. It's understanding how to be collaborative through developing healthy team dynamics that are focused on shared goals, accountability, feedback, and trust. Because the truth is, especially with these big transformations, you're often, like I said, bringing in people from many different departments, leaders from different roles or levels, change ambassadors, and so on. Just because they're part of the same organization, and just because maybe they have worked with one another in some capacity before, this is probably the first time that they ever had to work as a team to design, define, implement, test, and execute something new. So, those are skills that often need to be trained and coached and reinforced and learned because we don't always know how to people well, right? We've been peopling since we were first born, but often navigating this world of other people can sometimes be a little tough. And so we need to have some clear standards, some modes of operation. So that way, as a team, especially as a new team, we're working together for shared success. And then lastly, we help organizations develop teams and leaders that are future focused. I am a consultant, but my ultimate goal of any engagement that I have is to develop consultants within your organization. I want you to have people in your organization, in your business, that are constantly thinking about what's next, that are evaluating what is and designing something for the future. Instead of every time there's a change or there's a hindrance, you have to bring in an external group. My ultimate goal is for you to have internal consultants who are empowered to design the future and move it forward so that way your people, the people who care most about your organization, who are the most invested about the future of what you do, your employees, they are the ones that are driving innovation and able to make those pivots whenever the market demands are thrust upon us. And so if you're wondering, is change readiness necessary? What's the gain of change readiness? Well, according to Google and their value of change management work and report that they have done, they came up with some stats which help kind of set the groundwork and set the why behind change readiness. When you have a well-structured change readiness program, whether that's something like our path or you use something like ProSci or another framework, it can help improve sponsorship of any change by 45%. It can increase engagement across the organization by 42%. It can improve your communications, not just what, but how and where and when, and if people actually watch it or read it, by 34%. And the overall ROI, the return on any type of change readiness investment, is over 135%. I always like to say these change projects are not cheap. They're not cheap when it comes to the time, money, or resources that you are spending. You are investing often over, close to half or over $1 million or more on these change initiatives. Make sure that every dollar of that investment counts and is worth it and is being maximized by ensuring that your people are empowered and are in those rooms collaborating together, making the right decisions to achieve the goals that you have set out to achieve as part of the vision and strategy of your organization. And so to help you get started, there's a couple resources that Katie's going to share with you after this webinar that are just going to help you in addition to the other resources that we've shared over the past few webinars. These will help you start to determine and design your path for change readiness. The first one is a bit of a roadmap where you're answering a couple key questions and identifying maybe where you're at along your change journey and seeing maybe what additional help or resources or guidance you might need in order to ensure you're not missing any key factors, key stages in your change readiness process. And then also I've thrown in a little guide that can help you start to plan some of your communication when it comes to change. So that way, when you do start, or if you are already, as you start broadcasting this change across your organization and start having these conversations, you have a little bit more meat around the talking points and help you create FAQs and the like. So on that note, I want to thank you so much for your time. Thank you for staying with me during today's webinar. And I am just so excited for you and the change that you are either currently embarking on or about to embark on. And I would love to help be a support to you in this process in any way that I can, along with the Newberry team. I think the key things here is that begin to prepare for your change as early as you can. In fact, even a lot earlier than you think, because the more you delay engaging with change, the greater risk you are introducing with the change that you are creating. Because there's already plenty of conversation, plenty of narratives, plenty of beliefs, plenty of stories that are already being told and communicated around your organization unofficially about this change. So why not take that back and have something that's more of a collaborative change network, so that way you can ensure that the communications that are being shared are actually in alignment with where it is you're trying to go and why. And if you want to assess your stage of change readiness, see where you're at within your change ready journey, and see if there's any opportunities to maybe course correct or maybe double down on an area that maybe you've been overlooking, please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My email address is here. I would be happy to help support you in any way that I can and answer any questions that you might have, even if you're just curious about what do I need to do next. I would love to chat with you about it. And then, of course, definitely partner with our wonderful hosts here at Newberry Partners to help you design your current and future state processes, evaluate those systems, get your data healthy, and prepare you for implementation and adoption success for any change, big or small, across your organization. And so I thank you for your time. Godspeed, change well, and I wish you an amazing 2025 where you're not just surviving, but you're thriving within your organization. Thanks. See how long this is.